Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the international webinar on a very important subject. We are gathered here. I want to welcome Dr. Vesam, who has spearheaded and came up with this wonderful concept of this webinar. We at the Policy Times, based in New Delhi, India, are always committed to some of
Recording in progress.
across the world which are of paramount importance to the society. Palestine is a very important country in the world which is undergoing a lot of trouble since quite long. I mean, since it's been more than 5 decades that we have a problem in the Middle East, and the country has been, at the center stage of a lot of trouble. The recent event that we witnessed a couple of months back is again is a series of such happening with the people of this land. We want to understand what happened there and what kind of support is needed to reconstruct the nation and to heal the pain that the people of the land has been suffering from. So, we at the Policy Times are always committed for some good things happening in the society, and this is certainly one of them. I want to thank Dr. Vesam for leading such a nice initiative. I'm very happy we have the chairman of NIED, Dr. Ahmed, to give a detailed account of what is happening there and what is the future plan and roadmap. So I do not want to take more time. I want to invite Dr. Vesam to kindly take the discussion forward and give a direction of what we are going to discuss today. With this, I want to hand over the floor to Dr. Vesam.
Okay, Mr. Akram, thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. So welcome everyone for this session to discuss and also present the findings of the assessment of the war impacts on Gaza Strip, the recent war. And I would like to thank the team members who participated in conducting this assessment. And also, so I just like Mr. Akram mentioned, this assessment and this study was an initiative by the National Institute for Environment and Development, and with the participation of a team of specialized persons in different sectors, where we will shortly present the finding of this baseline assessment. And I think now I will give the floor to Dr. Ahmed Hillis. He is the chairman of the National Institute for Environment and Development. So the floor is yours, Dr. Ahmed, for the opening remarks.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wissam. Thank you, Dr. Akram. And I would like to welcome everybody here. It's a great opportunity to join this important webinar or session to discuss the results on the findings of the recent wars perpetrated against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. And I would like especially to welcome the people or our friends, our colleagues from outside of Palestine, and also the experts and let me say the public figure who joined us in this webinar. And I hope the coming minutes will be very useful and benefit for all parties in the Gaza Strip to build upon in their in future interventions regarding the environment. National Institute for Environment and Development is a joint stock limited liability organization established in 2015 and officially registered in 2018 in compliance with Commercial Companies Law 2012 and the Ministry of National Economy of Palestine. The Institute is the first in the Gaza Strip to demonstrate a developmental and environmental, let me say, nature, whose core work is the environment and health projects in parallel with the social, economic, and managerial plans, projects, and programs. Need endorsed endeavors to assume an effective role in developing all aspects of life in Palestine and in the Gaza Strip particularly, through protecting the environment and its components, as the Institute implements many strategic developmental plans, projects, programs, in addition to the initiatives. And one of that important initiatives, this what Dr. Wissam and his team have done in the recent period of time, as evaluation of these let me say, targeted elements of environmental elements by the recent work. I would like to add something very important to be taken into consideration to follow up and to continue talking about what is the situation after this war. This war, the 2021, came after 14 years of blockage, complete closure of the borders of the Gaza Strip by the occupation, by the Israeli occupation, which hindered the strategic, let me say, projects can be used as developmental for the large scale projects related to the environmental sector in the Gaza Strip, the seawater treatment plants or the desalination plants, wastewater treatment plants, handling or managing integrated solid waste management in the Gaza Strip and dumping sites. And Mr. Injnour is one of the most important experts in this field in the Gaza Strip who joined us, and I welcome him for this attendance. In addition to that, this siege or this closure involved many other wars, severe and harsh, let me say, wars launched against the Gaza Strip 2014, 2012, and finally the recent one, 2021. In addition to that problems, the Gaza Strip suffer from the economic situation. This is very important. The economic situation, catastrophic, tragic, deteriorated in the Gaza Strip. The poverty line and unemployment, all of that economic issues, in addition to the international funds, which affect the development and, let me say, the handling of the environmental issues, especially with municipalities in the Gaza Strip. And in addition to that, all of that, we have a population growth rate around 4 to 4.2, which means that we are increasing the Gaza Strip that more than 70 to 80,000 people every year annually. We have to know that this small crowded area is not more than 387 square kilometer involved by or inhabited by more than 2,200,000 people. If we divided the two records, we will find that 6,000 people live in each square kilometer. By this scarcity of resources, and as all of you know, that the environmental deterioration depends on the consumption of the resources and the services, its goods and services. The services by how much this environment can receive the pollution produced from those people. In addition to all of that, the deterioration of the strategic planning and implementation of projects because of the dual use concepts, let me say, done against the Gaza Strip on the border, and the economic situation and the wars or the conflicts that happened in this area, all of that produced for us as a vulnerable environment in all sectors: the water, the solid waste, the soil, the agricultural sector, and even the shoreline region. We are close to the Mediterranean Sea, which receive from just Gaza Strip more than 120 to 1,000 cubic meter of raw sewage or partially treated sewage, polluted the main area of recreational area for the bathers in the Gaza Strip. All of these situation came after 14 to 15 years of closure, and in addition to the electricity outage and the problems related to the next, which less than 20% of our demand. The available electricity sometimes reach 20%, and in maximum cannot reach more than 40% of our needs. We need more than 600 megawatt, and the available electricity not more than 100 megawatt. All of the facilities of the environmental sector depend or relying completely on the electricity. As you know, the treatment plants of the wastewater, in addition to the desalination of the seawater, in addition to the other, let me say, facilities to enhance or as reclamation of the environmental situation. I'm not going to take a lot of time to explain what's the situation directly before the war. I'll give my colleague, Dr. Wissam, the opportunity to explain what they have done in their report and the methodology that they have used to implement this study as an initiative in the National Institute for Environment and Development to make or to build up as something like a benchmark or the disk review to be used as benchmark for the coming period of time where the governmental and non-governmental and also the international organizations working in the Gaza Strip, where they have to go forward to enhance the life of the people, the debris in the street, the damages or the destruction of the networks in the Gaza, in addition to other, let me say, findings of that war in that report. Thank you again. And welcome in this important webinar, and I hope this report will be used by everybody to know and to make the picture more clear for all of the stakeholders and actors and active actors in this field of work. And you are welcome again, and take your time, Dr. Wissam.
Okay, Dr. Ahmed, thank you so much for the opening remarks. And again, welcome everyone for this important webinar to discuss the findings of the assessment, the impact assessment of the recent war in Gaza. Just to give a background on the idea to conduct the assessment, actually, it is more on kind of compiling and documenting the figures on the damages at multi-sector of the, in Gaza Strip. We are talking about building and infrastructure. We are talking about the environment and water sector, the solid waste management system. We are talking about the energy system. We are talking about the social and the economic sector as well. And at the end, we'll try to present some proposed interventions and recommendations from the assessment. So the idea of this report, the idea of this assessment is to provide a baseline study for the interventions, for the future interventions, because locally, we realize that we are writing a lot in Arabic. We are publishing some numbers here and there, but there is no study, there is no report that compile and document all these figures from the different official agencies and put them in an official report to be a reference for the local and international agencies later on. Because we know that in this short period, we can't conduct a lot of tests. Like, for example, when we talk about the environmental sector, you need to conduct sampling and analysis for soil, for air and water. So we can't do that because of the limitation on, definitely that will cost. So the funding is needed, and technically there is a challenge to conduct all these analysis because of the incapability of the local institution to do that to some extent. So the idea was to compile, document with different methodologies from the data collection of the, the secondary data, with also interviewing the officers at the different agencies, and that to make sure that we have one report which has all the data related to the sectors that were damaged during the war, the recent war. So I think here I'll just share some slides on the finding. So for the, as I mentioned, I would like to thank the team that participated in the assessment, in this assessment. So you can see here the names of the team. And for our colleagues who are the international audience at this webinar, so just to give you a brief on the history of the Palestinian suffering.
Dr. I'm sorry for inconvenience. Can you share with us your screen?
Yeah, I think it is shared. I'm not sure whether you can see it or not.
Okay, now it's work. Okay, it works.
Okay, so you can see here how the Israeli occupation extended and the land of the Palestinian shrank. And that shows, the map shows the Palestine map since 1947 up to the present situation, where you see the expansion of the Israeli settlement and the shrinkage of the Palestinian land. And you can see that in the current scenario where, you know, the current Palestinian land shrinked to the very minimal, to, you know, in some numbers, they said like it's only 15 or 12% of the original and historical land of Palestine. So we know that, you know, Gaza been under siege for the last 15 years, and we have several wars started. We had some attacks in 2006, and there was a large-scale operation war in 2008, and then 2012, 2014, and the recent, which was in 2021 in May, and it lasted for 11 days. So the attacks, the Israeli attacks, caused 253 fatalities. Out of them, 66 kids. We had 39 ladies and all 17 all people who were killed, and we are talking about 1,948 people who injured in this operation, in this war. So in terms of the attacks, targeted the buildings, infrastructure, roads, factories, companies, and these add to the suffering of people who've been under siege for the last 15 years. So you can see here, again, maybe for the benefits and for our colleagues from the international audience, you can see here the map of Gaza, where you can see a populated area, a sieged area, where these are the border lines, which controlled by the Israeli, and the limitation on the movement of people. And again, this is the suffering being increased due to the ongoing conflict, ongoing war from the Israeli side. So in terms of buildings and infrastructure, we are talking about a destruction of 1,200 housing units that completely destroyed, and more than 1,000 housing units being partially destroyed, and again, another 40,000 units, which is partially destroyed. So some of these partially destroyed with a very, and you know, the 1,000 partially destroyed, it become unfit for habitation or use. So we are talking again about complete destruction of 74 government offices, and you know, we are talking about 400,000 tons of rubbles, the rubbles that, you know, resulted from the attacks. And these are some of the photos for the high-rise building that's been destroyed in Gaza, the civilian building that's been destroyed due to the Israeli attacks. So in terms of the cause of these damages, according to the Ministry of Housing and Public Work, these numbers, we are talking about total costs of 72 million. So a total cost of the demolition, whether we are talking about the partially, totally destroyed and the partially destroyed, we are talking about $564 million. And we are also talking about the destruction of the infrastructure. And this is one of the main roads in Gaza, or two main roads in Gaza. So the estimated damage cost, the total cost is $992,000. So the damages and the destruction of the infrastructure caused some direct and indirect effects, right? So we seen a lot of attacks to the water network, the sewer networks, the pump stations, right? So that caused the direct impacts of the suspension of the underground water wells and depriving the population of food and drinking water, sewage accumulation in streets and residential neighborhood. The wastewater accumulates in collection stations, leading to health hazards. The attacks of the infrastructure and roads that cause traffic disruption, that is also after the attacks. And we are talking about destruction of sewage lines. And the indirect attacks, we are talking about sewage leakage into the aquifer, which might affect the groundwater quality. We are talking about spread of harmful the flies and rodents. We are talking about health and epidemic disease. We are talking about soil pollution, which might affect the fertility and also the productivity of the agriculture sector. And we are talking about the limiting the movement of people and also increasing the pollution in the urban area of Gaza. So, and talking about the environmental elements, we had a lot of attacks on the infrastructure, the water networks, the sewer networks, and one of the impacts as well, when we talk about the attacks for the energy system, for the wiring networks, for the transformers, for the energy. You see here some photos for the attacks of the network and the sewer network in Gaza. Some of these indirect impacts, when you have a shortage of energy, so you will have, that will influence the water treatment plants. You will have a negative influence on the wastewater treatment plants. And that is already a sector, a deteriorated sector, where when you have a shortage and ineffective systems of treatments, so you will have an impact on providing people with the clean water, if we are talking about the water wells, the pump stations. And when we talk about the wastewater treatment plants, that also affect the treatment and the disposal of the wastewater, and that cause the disposal of the untreated wastewater to the sea, which again will create a public health hazard to the people in Gaza. So you have some direct impacts, which is destruction of the infrastructure, and you are talking about more than 17,000 meters of destruction of networks, which definitely create a lot of environmental and health hazard in Gaza. And we have one more catastrophe and a disaster which happened in North Gaza, in Beit Lahia, where one of the biggest stores of pesticides were directly attacked. And you can see here in the tables the amounts of pesticides that been damaged. That store contained 259 tons of pesticides, 1,758 tons of fertilizers, and also 9,312 tons of seeds. And those, especially when we talk about the pesticides and fertilizers, so all these amounts being burned, and only the remaining percentage, as you can see here, of the pesticides. We're talking about 10% of the amount, while in the fertilizers, it's 50%. And you know, when you are talking about chemicals that is being burned, so there will be a release of a lot of chemicals, and that happens in a populated area, and the people inhale those chemicals, right? And that is so dangerous and carcinogenic. You know, there is a challenge here when we talk about the pesticides and the chemicals, that you can't really know the formulas that will be produced in the atmosphere when those carcinogenic material, whether it is inhaled directly or it undergoes a secondary reaction in the, you know, you have the fire, you have the high temperature, so these components will be oxidized and will spread in the air, and that will again, you know, deteriorate the environmental condition. And so it's not only affecting air, we are talking about the deposition of these pollutants on soil, and they might infiltrate in the soil and affect the groundwater. And the deposition also, we are talking about an impact on the soil, the crops, and it will affect the crops yield, it will affect the crops in terms of the toxicity, which might be, you know, when we talk about the food chain, it might be transferred to the human, and then you will have a synergistic impact on the people health. So again, something which is, again, another point which is related to the agriculture sector, we are talking about pumping and tax of the agriculture lands. According to the reports by the agriculture ministry, we are talking about 400 sites which been attacked, and that affect the soil fertility. You need to treat the soil again to make it more fertile and be, you know, which can be planted and can be, again, you know, you can grow plants and get the food productivity going on. And that will affect the productivity of food, will affect food security. And in Gaza, food security is a national issue, because if the Palestinian, they don't have their own food in Gaza, you know, that will create a national threat. Because if we can remember, in 2014, the war lasted for 51 days. So just imagine if we don't have enough food, at least in terms of vegetables and the basic needs of the Palestinian in Gaza, that will be a national threat issue. You can see here in the photos the chemicals, the pesticides store, which was bombed by the Israeli forces, and you see the smoke and you know, the pollutants that have been emitted in the atmosphere. So again, if we move to another sector, which is the health sector, as I reported in the earlier slides about the fatalities, but we also have an impact on the facilities, the infrastructure of the health sector, where we have a lot of attacks, as you can see in the table. The facilities, like the Indonesian hospital, Hala Al Shawa Health Center. So these centers, these medical centers, were affected directly and were, you know, partially destroyed, or the surrounding were bombed. So they have a lot of damages in the infrastructure, which one of the centers was the vaccine, the vaccine for COVID-19, the center of vaccination at the central Gaza city was damaged by one of the Israeli attacks. So, as I mentioned, on the impacts on the agriculture, we had a lot of direct impacts, direct attacks to the lands, also the impacts on the energy we have, again, lots of attacks on the transformers, on the energy network that had a direct impact on people, where a lot of places were cut off electricity for long hours. In many places, we got the power supply for only 4 hours, and that during the war, after war, when they fixed the network, currently we are having 8 hours. The electricity will be provided, while the other hours it will be off, because the incapability of the Gaza power plant to provide the energy supply that the Gazan needs. So this war adding to the suffering and to the shortage of power supply in Gaza Strip. And so when we talk about the education sector, we have a targeting of the Israeli forces to the schooling system, to school buildings. We had a target of 5%, a directly target to 5% of the schools in Gaza, and indirect, which reach up to 44% of the the schools in Gaza. And so this is in numbers. We are talking about 14 schools, and the affected students, we are talking about more than 14,000. Indirect affected school, 132. And the most affected students, we are talking about almost 120,000. One more issue regarding the education sector, when we have those attacks, so the Ministry of Education has to stop the education, to end the year earlier, because they can't run on classes in those schools. So it affects also the educational process. And maybe here it's worth to add one more impact, that when we have attacks on the network, the electrical network and the telecommunication network, that affected the education system as well, because as you know, most of the, for the last few months, the students are learning online due to the COVID-19, and that affected the process, the education process, the higher education process, because the distraction of the networks, both for electricity and telecommunication, that affected more than 50,000 customers. Means we are talking about almost 200,000 people being affected by the damage of the electrical and the telecommunication system in Gaza. So that is the kind of the indirect impact which caused by those attacks in the recent war. And definitely one of the aspects, we had also a damage to the archaeological and cultural sites in Gaza. So a lot of these sites being damaged directly. And we have definitely a lot of social and psychological effects on during the aggression, and also after the aggression, where a lot of people need to intensive psychological treatment, such individuals, counseling, treatment, and individual care, and also the children who have lost their parents, mothers, brothers, or homes are often at risk of post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is one of the sectors that need to be handled well, and that will have a long-term impact on the Palestinian community. So I think maybe we can go to the last and important part of this study, which is the proposed interventions and proposed recommendation, and we categorize that to 3 categories. So the first one is recommendation for the government agencies, where we talk about the need to develop environmental emergency management to include risk control and mitigation strategies. We are talking about the need for restoration of the environment, rehabilitation of the internal and external environment and public health sector. We are talking about the need to develop a national plan for disaster and crisis management, also making sure that the current reconstruction process to be a sustainable and green. And here I think I need to elaborate on this point, because we have a good practice in Gaza considered to be one of the sustainable practices, which is the recycling of the construction rubbles, the debris, and that is a good business in Gaza, which is being generated and started because of the challenge of bringing raw material into Gaza. But we have to control this kind of practice to make sure that the recycling process is safe in terms of protecting the workers who are doing the crushing and recycling on site. And also we have a lot of crushers in Gaza Strip. So we have to make sure that the practice in the crushers need to be also protected the people. We need to control the emission of particulates that might deposit later on the soil and the crops, which will affect the food security later on. And one more point which need to be also taken care of, that we have to make sure that the debris, those construction rubbles, we might have some radioactive materials which been bombed during the attacks. So if we recycle these materials and the radioactive material is still there, if we recycle the concrete or these concrete elements to be part, like because I learned that they recycle these construction waste to convert to generate and to produce blocks. So if you use these elements in the construction, they might have a risk later on the residents if they still have some radioactive materials. And there is one more important point, which is developing and implementing capacity building program on disaster and crisis management for the relevant governmental bodies, which is a very crucial issue here in Gaza, and also developing environmental safety plans to include protection of workers, civilians, facilities, and natural sources, and also providing a national team of psychologists and social workers in Gaza, providing centers to provide and to provide the service, the psychological and social services to people, provide entertainment spaces for children, create effective and efficient network of direct contact with international protection institutions, evaluate the impact of the effectiveness of psychological prevention programs, and also conducting new qualitative studies on the development of symptoms resulting from the psychological trauma. So here we have also some other recommendations, which is for the NGOs, for the non-governmental organization, and for the community-based organization, where there is a need to train as many people as possible on the basic of mental health and first aid, and also train people on the emergency evacuation plans, and also participation in the development of entertainment place that is in collaboration with the government, integrated children and their families into face-to-face and online psychological recovery programs, and also provide basic needs for children after the end of the aggression, strengthen the entertainment and psychological support, and also conducting a long-term psychological and social studies. Maybe the last part, which is recommendation for international organizations, and that is crucial as well. We are talking about developing and enhancing the cooperation and coordination among the international organization and the integration of their activities with the local organization, assisting in conducting a full-scale assessment of the long-term war impacts. We are talking about a frequent attacks, frequent wars from 2006 up to 2020. So that is really needed, because The impacts of the war in 2014 might be seen currently when we talk about long term in terms of the all these toxic elements, all these fumes of the attacks that been inhaled, and also the toxic elements that been deposited in the soil and polluted the water, polluted the food. Those symptoms might develop at a longer term. So we need a full scale for the last 15 years to see the impacts, and also to assist to set up a scientific lab for crucial sampling and testing of the environmental elements which might be damaged due to the recurrent Israeli aggressions, and also develop a network of international experts who can assist the local specialists in conducting the required advanced and deep pollution analysis. So I think that's all the finding that I wanted to share. And just to inform you, we will provide all the attendees of these webinar and also all the interested people, I think we'll share it with our networks, the full report, and that will be done by next week. And I think now I'll give the floor back to Dr. Ahmed if he has more points to add before we open the floor for the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you also so much, Dr. Wissam, for this informative, comprehensive, integrated presentation, and your team also. I would like to thank all of them for this, let me say, diving deeply in these results, authorizing and trusting the results produced from everywhere, from all the stakeholders related to this sector. Let me say, they work the days and the nights directly following to the war to produce this report. As you know, the time is very important, and the crucial issue for the reports of the assessment. The atmospheric conditions affect the let me say the indicators of the war, and if we did it indirectly or indirectly, it will affect the results and the severity of the findings. I would like to add something very important to be very well known for everybody. During the recent war, 2014, we contacted the United Nations Environment Program as ECA, as Environmental Quality Authority, to send us let me say, facts-finding committees, environmental facts-finding committees, and experts team to teach us or to assist us to implement a very deep, comprehensive, accurate, effective evaluation, environmental evaluation for all targeted sectors, directly and indirectly. And they send us an official letter that they will send this committee, this experts team, directly when ceasefires and when the escalation is stopped. And we were very, let me say, encouraged to implement some of the important actions to be done directly after the war. But the shocking issues that the Israeli occupation did, that they refused to give them any permission or any allowance to go inside Gaza Strip. They refused completely from A to Z to discuss this point as Israeli occupation and Israeli, let me say, closure of the border and siege, which built for all of us a very big question mark, what the Israeli occupation used against the Gaza Strip and what they strike the Gaza environment and don't want the international community to see or to watch. This report, depending on the result that presented by my colleague, Dr. Wissam, and many of other records cannot be mentioned in small, let me say, interval of time during this webinar, will be highly, or let me say, accurately mentioned in the report as whole, will be very important for all of us to be, let me say, developed by international laboratory deep experimental analysis for some of very toxic and complicated chemicals that manufactured and involved inside the weapons that used against the Israeli against Palestinian people and areas. In addition to that, the synergistic effects of the chemicals in the soil by the condition of the soil, in the air by the condition of the air, and deposit of these chemicals on the ground, and leakage or perpetrated, or let me say percolating of these chemicals for the main source of water of the Gazans in this area, the groundwater aquifer, which is fragile, vulnerable, and 97% of this groundwater is not fit for the as drinking water because of the pollution from many other sources. Adding of this source as very hazardous and toxic material, as you know, in general, the weapons consist of many of very toxic heavy metals, let me say, and very toxic organic polymers and compounds. In addition to the targeted places, just like what Dr. Wissam mentioned, the storage, the pesticides and the herbicides and the chemicals, which consist of 70% of the use of the Gaza Strip. They provide 70% of the agricultural activities in the Gaza Strip by their needs of and chemicals. The Khadir storage, which targeted by 22 direct, indiscriminate or concentrate intense shelling by the Israeli forces. And these chemicals released directly as randomly for all of these surrounding environments, like people also and domestic areas. I would like to hear from all of you, and if you would like, we will share with you the final version of this report, which is an important report, and I hope all of the stakeholders again will rely on the findings of this report to build up their interventions in the future. That's it from my side, and welcome everybody in this moment and in this webinar.
Okay, thank you again, Dr. Ahmed.
You're welcome.
I think now we open the floor now if there is any comment, any question. And I think we have a lot of experts in the webinar today, so we can have their views as well. So maybe Mr. Noor, do you have any comment? Maybe you want to add something on the solid waste management system in Gaza?
Sure, Doctor. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting us for this important webinar. It's really interesting to see this compilation of data. And you are right, having the data in one set, in one presentation, one report is important for all of us. From a solid waste management perspective, we benefit from this compilation of data, and I expect the same thing for our colleagues in the agricultural sector and other economic sectors as well. You said something very important that caught my attention on the recommendation side that I would love to expand on at one point, because we have problems, as rightfully explained in the beginning by Dr. Ahmed Hillis in the beginning, that Gaza Strip has been suffering from multiplication of problems all over the last years of conflict, and as Mr. Akram also cited as well. So we need to put that in context. Like one particular recommendation was on a national plan regarding emergencies and crisis management. You are right on target, and from a solid waste management perspective, when you look at the entire Gaza Strip, for instance, and I think it applies to West Bank in one way or another, but for Gaza in particular, because we have the history of the military, let's say, escalation that takes place, you will find out that there are fragmented, emergency committees, but not, unified in a way. In a more practical sense, like when you look at solid waste management in particular, you have this kind of emergency committees differ in their capacity and ability to deal with, crises, depending on their size. The classic example, when you compare them, like in the municipal sector with solid waste management, someone like the Gaza city, which is the biggest city in Palestine, and compare and contrast with the other 24 municipalities, excluding of course Khan Younis and Jabalia, which are sizable in terms of, resources. So you are right when we look at this, try to unify the approach and build on, if you will, some existing, mechanism that we can further enhance. Like, for instance, that we promote from our side very much the shared, utilities, like the Joint Services Council, which, basically unify the resources of individual municipalities. We try to do an exercise having contingency plan for the Joint Service Council, but yet it did not go to the level to have everybody benefiting from again having the plans on the ground. And also you're right, when we talk about these crises, we have to put more, let's say, benefit from the expertise, whether inside Palestine or outside, as Dr. Ahmed later said. When we look at this conflict in particular, 2021, it differs than the previous ones. Actually, it went against, let's say, if I may say, the playbook of the previous, conflicts. Nobody expected, this concentration. Nobody expected, like, for the first time, the border areas were less, let's say, danger than the inner city. It was really surprising. So again, investing in having this plan, this national plan, and investing on the crisis and benefiting from the accumulated experience will be just right on target. Just final note on solid waste management. You notice, the biggest problem was, again, where the concentration of attacks were. When we look at the Gaza City, we were on the verge, as you know very well, Doctor, in the verge of having a public epidemic, because we have all the solid waste, including medical waste, accumulated in, for instance, Al Yarmouk, transfer point. We were lucky, if you will, and maybe the Almighty was looking down at us because the humidity and the temperature were not like in July or typical July or August. Otherwise, we would have gone into a public epidemic. This accumulation that reached around 2,500 tons in one place near the concentration of Gaza City was a very real threat. You won't find the same situation if you go further south in Khan Yunis, because again, due to the nature of escalation that did not target, let's say, the end disposal sites, which happened to be near the border line. So these kind of aspects from the perspective of solid waste management, it's worth a look into even more and build on it. And again, I'm very grateful for this report and this recommendation, and grateful to you, gentlemen, for inviting us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you so much, Sir Noor. So is there any other comment, or someone want to maybe suggestion? Because like I see, okay, Dr. Ziad.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much to all the people who arranged this webinar. A lot of work has a huge the report findings and your recommendation is very important, and at the same time it's very dangerous, really. So we can understand that all the sites of environments here in Gaza are affected seriously. So your recommendation must be put on tables for the decision makers, and must be followed also and continue, because you know that the environmental crisis needs tens or sometimes hundreds of years to see the results. So it's very dangerous. You know that particulate matters is very fine, and many diseases has been affected the lungs and lungs of the people, and contamination of water and agriculture. It needs sometimes 10 years to achieve their results. So I believe this is very important reports, and must be continue, and be I think many people must be share these reports and work and arrange for a continuous program until I think it must be maybe need years to follow their findings. Thank you very much for this for the team and for this huge and critical works.
Thank you,
Dr. Ahmed.
I would like to add something very important following to the points that mentioned by Dr. Ed and also Dr. Noor. It's very important for all of us to share or disseminate our findings for everybody, mainly the main players, let me say, and actors in this field, to build up their works correctly and accurately according to the findings of the endpoint. We will start our baseline after the end line of the others. We are thinking about, and with my colleague Dr. Wissam and his team, we are thinking about producing something like fact sheets summarizing results of this report to be translated in Arabic also and to be circulated for everybody, and the recommendations for each, let me say, component for every party.
Internet has been disconnected.
Some network
I can't hear you, Dr. Ahmed.
Dr. Wissam, you can take it forward.
Dr. Ahmed.
Okay, I think we have some internet issue out there with Dr. Ahmed. So before we take comments, Dr. Wissam, can we invite? Okay, I think Mr. Adnan wants to speak. He raised his hand.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, Dr. Wissam, and the all. I think this report is very important and crucial for Gaza Strip. So I think will be issuing for taking the consideration of the recommendation of this report seriously by all health, agricultural, all sectors in Gaza and decision maker, because this is take all stages of life in Gaza. We talk about the agriculture, we talk about the water resources, the sewage system, all these components very important for human health. And so I think recommendation should be, and should be, I suggest another workshop for decision makers in Gaza to take these recommendations seriously and take it as way for application. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who would like to comment on this? Or you can also write in the chat box if we have any other participants who would like to ask any question or comment. You can write in the chat box, or you can switch on the mic and speak. So I see a lot of academicians who are joining us in the Zoom in the chat. Professor Dr. Sujana, I see you there. So Dr. Zayed, you spoke. So you're there. Yeah. Anyone else who would like to comment? I mean, the presentation was excellent. Yeah, Mr. Noor.
Mr. Akram, I just want to touch on something we started earlier before the webinar. Although we are looking at impact, environmental impact, it's, I think, good point to start looking forward. You did mention about, the idea of recycling, about circular economy. It would be great if we, include, this aspect in any planning, in any, lessons learned as well, because, it all comes together at the end of the day. And honestly, to be, I'm very, impressed that, the Policy Times is here along with the National Institute of Environment and Development. I think it's unprecedented, initiative from you, and something that we really appreciate. And I think down the road, having this, expertise from your side, and along with the National Institute and Dr. Wissam, I think, the environmental agenda will be pushed forward, because we did not have the chance in Gaza Strip, actually in the Palestinian territory in general, even the West Bank, frank, we don't have much, chance to push the environmental agenda besides, the national strategy that has been, set, on paper and has been, progressed yet, modestly. So, it's great to see this opportunity and build on, this, impressive exercise from you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Dr. Wesam is back, and I'm very delighted that you mentioned this. And yes, before that, we shortly discussed about this. I will present it. Dr. Wesam, you're back, and I'm just waiting for Dr. Ahmed to be back. Then I'll make a short comment on this, because I also strongly believe and feel, because a couple of days ago, I did an excellent interview with one of the senior people from Israel. The very basic comments that came out, and also we are working with the United States and many other countries. There are certain fundamentals for development of societies. And those fundamentals, number one, we have to make major investment, whether it is private or public investments, into our education system. The first investment has to go into education. The second amount of investment has to go into healthcare, because education gives us the basic capability, to build our nation. The second is healthcare. The second amount of investment has to go into healthcare to build this, because healthcare is the second challenge of the society, or to protect this population or people of the society. That is the second. So there is a power blackout. Dr. Wesam is back, but I understand there's a power blackout. That is why Dr. Ahmed was also concerned about the power cut. And same here.
Yes, we apologize. There is outage of electricity right now, and we're trying to back. Thank you.
Yeah, so we are waiting for you. We are waiting for Dr. Wesam. Dr. Wesam is here. We're waiting for Dr. Ahmed to be back soon. Power cut is here also in New Delhi. So it is not a phenomenon only in Gaza, or Palestine.
It's a normal thing, actually.
Right now in New Delhi, there is a power cut. So we are running on inverter. So I'll come back to the point. The first investment is to be made in education. The second investment is to be made in healthcare. And third, fourth, fifth would be technology, entrepreneurship, innovation. This will protect us building other important infrastructures that we need for the society. For example, if agriculture is a challenge, then technology and innovation will help us build or modernize our agriculture. If manufacturing is a challenge or industrialization is a challenge in our society, then technology and innovation and with good education will protect us from there. And that is exactly happening with the societies which are so prosperous, so-called prosperous, whether they are US or they are Europe and all. So what we need to realize and understand, the first investment has to be in education, healthcare, entrepreneurship, innovation, technology. If we can strategically make this, whether these are private investment or public investment, we don't need anyone's help, or no one, should be worried about. So that would be my first message. The second message, I'm really happy Dr. Ahmed, is yet to join, but I want to make a short presentation on what we are planning at Policy Times. Because Policy Times, as a development media, we realize that development is the ultimate aim of society. If we do not achieve development, then our next or coming generations would be at the receiving end of the social change. So what we are doing, we are recycling, and sustainability is a big sector. And a lot of innovation and change are coming in the society. We recently organized World Sustainability Summit. That summit gave us an understanding about the sustainability issues of this society. Like what should be a sustainable policy or strategy of a nation. And sustainability is a combination of a lot of things. Sustainability helps us fight water crisis or water conservation. The second is recycling. Recycling itself is a big sector, and we call it circular economy. Circular economy is the future phenomena through which we not only control the plastics and this plastic issue, we make a sustainable problem solving or solution of the plastic crisis that we have in the society, or we can have in the society for future. My system is getting a little slow, so I'm just yeah, it is. Normally my system is very fast. So what we are doing after the World Sustainability Summit, we are organizing an international conference on circular economy somewhere in Dubai, because Dubai, United Arab Emirates, there is the Dubai Expo 2020 happening there. And there we want to do an international conference on circular economy where the environment, sustainability and safety experts, as well as sustainability experts of multinational companies, whom we call EHS heads, as well as governments or civil society experts from across the world will participate in this. 190 plus countries are also participating in Dubai Expo. So the first 14 days, 1st October to 14th October, is the sustainability 2 weeks given, where only exhibition, conference, discussions will be on the sustainability sector and circular economy. So we will take a big delegation from India to Dubai to discuss this. I would be extremely happy if NIED and as Dr. Noor also mentioned, so we can all join together. Dr. Wesam is already part of it. So we can join hands together and we can make a very international level program where we will discuss this strategy, how we can make Palestine a complete circular economy, and what should be the role of plastic or pollution producers, then what should be the role of recyclers, what should be the role of brand owners. These are 3 important stakeholders in the society who work. And what kind of collaboration we can explore internationally between India, Palestine, or India, Middle East, and many other countries. My system is going a little slow, so that is why I'm not just able to share the screen. I'll try again. So this is a small brief, Mr. Noor. So if you want to say something on that, let me by that time share my screen, because the PDF is not opening.
Thank you, Mr. Akram. This is absolutely amazing. And, the good thing about what you mentioned, that, we have to start looking forward and not to be stationary in the crisis management. And although, again, what happened was terrible for everybody, but it's a good chance to look at the bright side and look forward. The concept of circular economy, you know very well, it's taking a good momentum around the world. And this is maybe a good opportunity for us at this part of the world to benefit. There are wonderful experiences in India. I know China is also, of course, going forward in that. It's surprising me to say, even when you look at the Western Hemisphere, the US, and even, they look also at experiences coming from India. Simply because, when we go back to the basics, as you rightfully mentioned, education, healthcare, and entrepreneurship and technology, these are really the bases for development at the long run. So again, back to having this webinar, it's a good opportunity to have all those wonderful people, our colleagues, and experts, to have them in one location. And one of the benefits of COVID, I have to say, is getting people to connect even more, because we did not have the chance before COVID. We were forced to use, the Zoom technology or the online technology to do that. And I think it's a good thing. And I think, even any crisis, even like, the COVID or like the war we have, we should come out with good lessons that can push us forward. So yes, thank you, Mr. Akram. And I really look forward to see, what you can, what we can exchange with regard to the Expo in Dubai, or with regard to a circular economy, because this concept, I think, needs to be fully comprehended at our side here of the equation. So thank you again, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dr. Wesam is back. Over to you, Dr. Wesam.
Thank you so much, Mr. Akram. We are sorry because even the solar energy system failed. so we have. Okay. So is there any other comments from our colleagues from the audience?
So sorry for this inconvenience, electricity outage.
The same, it is not only with Palestine and in Gaza. In New Delhi, there is also power cut. So that is why my internet connection is also down.
Okay.
So
Okay.
power cut is a global phenomenon, you know.
And we are not such great such India as India.
Dr. Ahmed and Dr. Wissam. I think it's
Yes.
very important to translate these reports in Arabic language and other languages more than English.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because all the people in all the world to know what's happening, what happened in Palestine, especially in Gaza Strip. So it's very important. I think it's very important, not only English but another.
Now we have a committee, proofreaders and editors.
French and other languages. If you could.
Okay, it's a good idea, and we are working on it. Okay, Dr. Wissam, you can take your time with Mr. Akram to finish this webinar. Now.
Okay, I think we can conclude the session over here, and would like to thank you all for joining us. Definitely we will provide you with a full report by next week, and we are hoping to see you in a different session where maybe we can organize more webinars to have a detailed discussion on certain sectors, or maybe on the implementation of the recommendation of this report. And so I would like to thank everyone for joining, and I will give back the floor to Mr. Akram.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wissam. We from India are absolutely committed to the cause of development globally. Palestine has been a victim of anti-development for long. The time has come now that we have to show a complete different or unique kind of leadership, which with Dr. Noor was just shortly discussing. We at Policy Times want to work with you on a couple of parameters, as we just mentioned. I'll repeat because you both were not there in the Zoom meet. Number one, there are 5 areas of collaboration we can do, and we from India with Policy Times are absolutely committed to work with you. Number one, the first foundation of social development is education. Education defines how our future generation will react and respond to the crisis they will face. Education can solve any kind of problem that we face in the society. So number one, let us ensure that no Palestinian kid will be deprived of education from now on. So whatever resources we generate, let us invest a good amount of resources to educate every last mile Palestinian kid. The second important infrastructure needed for social development is healthcare. Let us build the best healthcare of the world in Palestine, and let us build some of the brightest healthcare entrepreneurs coming from this Palestinian land. The third, fourth, fifth are technology, entrepreneurship, and innovation. Let Palestine be the land of innovation, entrepreneurs, and some of the brightest minds of the world. I mean, if we can achieve this, a large part and portion of the challenges can be easily met. This will be my message. We are organizing, sustainability is a very important aspect, as Dr. Ahmed, you also belong to in this sector, Dr. Wissam, and many of our experts joining us. We are organizing an international conference on circular economy in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, in lines with the Dubai Expo 2020, which is happening. So we invite you, NIED, and Dr. Wissam is already, our guide, advisor, and part of all the sustainability initiatives we do. We want to collaborate with you to come to Dubai and do one of the best, our international conference on circular economy, which is connected to recycling and circularization of the economy. Let us join hands how we can make Palestine one of the circular economy of the world, and then let there be some entrepreneurs coming in the circular sector or sustainability sector from Palestine, not only to serve Palestine but also to serve the world. Middle East is a big market. Asia is a big market. Some of us can be the brilliant entrepreneurs in the sustainability. Dr. Wesam is giving absolute leadership in mobilizing, advocating the sustainability issues across the world. If you can do that, we can turn our challenges into global opportunities. So with this, Dr. Ahmed, you want to say something?
Thank you so much for your invitation, and thank you so much for this encouraging power to make a very good and effective mutual cooperation in the coming period of time. And we are in need, looking for this cooperation. It's very important for all of us and for the global, let me say, scale, not for the local or the regional. Global-wise, let me say, or based work, we need to make a good connection and networking and, let me say, power mapping for these active centers in all over the world. And one of the important ones, like the policy time that we are going in the future by the assistance of my colleague, Dr. Wesam, in addition to other experts in the Gaza Strip, to build up this relationship. We have now in the Gaza Strip, Dr. Ziad Abuhin, he's one of the most important experts in the geophysical, let me say, studies, and they have his own center specialized in this area, and many other friends working in this, let me say, topics. So we will go to further, and we'll go deeply to build up and to develop this relation with your centers, and we will develop, let me say, the mutual cooperation to build up some visions, let me say, and activities to be implemented on the ground in every area to cope and to make them resilience against the emergency, like what we practiced all the time in the Gaza because of the occupation and the Israeli occupation. And also we have to mention that it's important to be taken into consideration. We have a good relationship with our friends in India as governmental in Palestine since Abu Ammar, the president, the Palestinian president, and all, let me say, political parties in the Gaza Strip and in Palestine as whole, in West Bank and Gaza Strip and in Jerusalem. We have a good relationship with the Indian government. Every time we see the support and the showing from our friends from India. So we will go further, and through this relation, it's very important. It's our pleasure also.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome. You are welcome.
With this, then we formally close our today's discussion. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us and making this event a success. We will, Dr. Wesam, if you can share the report, we can also publish it in our media, and with some concrete strategy what we want to come out, we will be very happy to promote it. And let the next billionaire come out of Palestine. Let the next social media revolution, whether it is a next Facebook or next Google, come from Palestine. So that is how we can make an impact, a positive impact in the society.
Thank you so much, Mr. Akram.
Thank you, Mr. Akram. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.